Hey guys, it's Will. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new to the channel, welcome and thank you for finding us. I hope you enjoy this video. If you're not subscribed, then you could subscribe. It would be much appreciated. Thank you so much. Let's jump right into the video and not waste any more time. We are talking about one of my favorite movies ever, released in 1999. It's The Matrix. Hell yes, one of the best sci-fi movies ever, one of the best cyberpunk movies ever, one of the best action movies ever. And what we're going to do today is a structural breakdown of the film. I'm not going to be looking at every single structural element, which means I'm not going to be looking at A story versus B story. We're just going to be focusing on the physical plot, which is the A story. I'm not going to talk about character arc, character triangles, things like that. I will be doing separate videos in which I talk about those things, and I will be using the same movies I've been using for structural breakdowns so that you can see how all these pieces fit together. So I'll talk about character triangles in like Raiders of the Lost Ark and in Frozen and in The Matrix, and I'll talk about arc and B story and all that stuff. But I think that those things all together are too big really to fit into a single digestible YouTube video. So what I'm doing now is just kind of focusing on the 3-act structure, the sequence breakdown, and some major plot points along the way. This film was written and directed by the Wachowskis. It stars Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne Moss, Hugo Weaving, great cast in this movie. Also worth noting, as I say every time I make a video for this channel, it is film theory, it is not film fact. So there are people out there who I know for a fact actually that there are people out there who disagree with me on The Matrix, because I'm going to talk about that because there's a really interesting major plot point in this film that a lot of people disagree on where it falls within the structure of the film. I think that's really interesting. Just to let you know my perspective, even though I've said this in other videos, I think it's important to be clear about it in case you're new to the channel. My primary professor who taught structure to us when I was in grad school for screenwriting was named Beth Serlin. Beth Serlin went to USC, which is the University of Southern California, which is widely considered to be one of the best film schools in the world. She had a classmate named Paul Joseph Galino, who is this guy who wrote this book. So even though I didn't go to USC, I kind of studied the USC School of Cinematic Narrative and Structure. And this was like the main textbook that we used for our classes in which we broke down the structure of screenplays. So we're going to jump right into this video and we're going to talk about The Matrix. So this is my rudimentary, badly photoshopped image of basic 3-act structure. I apologize, I'm not very good at Photoshop. But we have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, which you can see there, the inciting incident, the midpoint, the 3rd act twist, which are some major plot points I want to talk about. Before the inciting incident, you have the first sequence of Act 1. After that, you have the second sequence of Act 1. You have that little bar there. Then you have sequence 1 and 2 of Act 2, which are sequences 3 and 4 of the film. You have the midpoint. You have sequences 3 and 4 of Act 2, which are sequences 5 and 6 of the film. Then we have the break into the 3rd act. We have sequences 7 and 8 in the 3rd act, and we have the 3rd act twist. And again, film theory, not film fact. We're just going to look at The Matrix and we're going to walk through it, starting at the beginning, moving towards the end. And like I said, there is a plot point in this film that I did some Googling, I did some reading about it, that a lot of people disagree on. And I think that's really, really interesting. So I want to talk about that. I want to tell you my theory on it and what other people have said about it. So The Matrix opens with a teaser, which is like a usually 5, sometimes 10-minute scene at the beginning of a movie that sets up the world, it sets up the characters, it sets up the action, it sets up the story, stuff like that. These are very, very prevalent in genre tentpole types of films, and they're very prevalent in genre filmmaking of like sci-fi, fantasy kind of variety, because it helps set up the fact that you are in a world that is not the day-to-day world that we are used to, right? So in a drama, you might not necessarily need a teaser because you're just putting people into a world in which they already live, right? Whereas in a film like The Matrix, there's a lot of stuff you have to set up so that people understand the world that they are inhabiting in the film, because it's a sci-fi world, it's a cyberpunk world that has very specific rules, technology, mythology, all of that stuff, right? So the teaser is the opening of the film. Now we get into the plot point that is very hotly contested, which I think is really interesting. It's the inciting incident. So what is the inciting incident? I refer to the inciting incident, or rather I define the inciting incident to myself when I think about screenwriting and writing more generally speaking, as the thing that makes the 2nd act inevitable. If you think of the 2nd act goal as the primary action and plot of the film, what is the thing that makes it inevitable that you are going to go from the beginning of your film into that 2nd act and have all of that action and have the film unfold? I was thinking about what the inciting incident is in The Matrix when I was preparing this video and rewatching the film and stuff like that. And like I said, I did some Googling, I did some reading, and I got a lot of different answers, which I thought was really interesting. So I'm going to talk about 3 of the answers I found online, and then I'm going to tell you what I think the inciting incident is, and I'll kind of explain everything as I walk through it. So one, I think it was a blog I read by a screenwriting or professor or something like that, defines the inciting incident in The Matrix as when Trinity approaches Neo at the club. And she tells him, like, you know, you've been thinking about the Matrix your whole life. You know you need to know what it is. Morpheus is looking for you, all this stuff, right? It's like kind of his introduction into the fact that there is like a physical person in front of him who represents this thing that he's heard so much about and is so intrigued by, that's so big in hacker culture and stuff like that, right? So I could see why someone would think that that's the inciting incident, because it's his first physical run-in with someone who is from that world, who is proof of the fact that it exists, right? Another thing that I read was the scene where, so this is Neo, Thomas Anderson, Keanu Reeves is in his office, and he gets a phone delivered to him by like a FedEx or UPS guy or whatever, and the phone rings and he answers the phone, and Morpheus is on the phone, and Morpheus is saying, there are people coming to get you. I can talk you out of the building so that you can get away from them, and then you can come and meet me or whatever, right? Again, I could see why someone might think this was the inciting incident, because Neo is taking action to move towards Morpheus, towards essentially the story of the film, and is trying to get away from the agents who essentially represent what is his status quo, by which I mean what is normal in his world. If he says, no, I'm not going to run away, the agents can capture me, I'm going to stay in this world and my life will not change, right? Then the movie never happens. So because he answers the phone call and he takes the action towards Morpheus, you could argue, well, he's moving in that direction, literally physically moving in that direction. So he's taking steps towards the action of the film. The other thing I read, which is the one I honestly would most agree with of all the different ones I read, is when Neo is in the interrogation room with the agents, and they offer him an out. They're like, we'll erase your criminal history, you can have your good job, and we'll put you back into society and everything. He doesn't know. I should also say, obviously, huge spoilers for The Matrix, because we're going to walk through every plot point, right? But what he doesn't know is that what they're really saying to him is, we'll reinsert you into the Matrix and you'll be a happy little battery for us, and you can help us bust these people who are trying to bring down the machines and the simulation and stuff like that. And Neo says no to them, right? So he's actively making a decision in this moment to say, I want to move towards Morpheus, I want to move towards Trinity, I want to know what the Matrix is, I want to take that journey, right? And Agent Smith has offered him an opportunity to walk away from it, and he doesn't. So again, I understand why you would define this as the inciting incident. I'll explain to you why I disagree, respectfully, obviously, with these interpretations of what the inciting incident is. With this particular scene, and with the scene where he answers the phone, it's both of those scenes are an opportunity for Neo to make a decision to not go towards the action of the film. But if you're going to say it's one of those scenes, how do you decide which one it is versus the other one, if essentially they're the same notion of him making this philosophical decision to move towards Morpheus and not to stay in the comfort of the status quo of his world? There's an other scene in the first act where he has to make a similar active decision. He's in the car. This is Neo's point of view, looking out of the car. And Trinity is saying to him, you know where that street goes. You know what it is. You know exactly where it ends, right? Neo's thinking about getting out of the car. He's in the car with APOC, and is her name Flux? And the woman with the white hair, and Trinity. And he's like, you guys are crazy. I'm getting out of here. And he almost walks away. And Trinity talks to him, and he decides not to walk away. So my thought process is, you know, the whole kind of first act of The Matrix is Neo making decisions that bring him closer to the Matrix, right? He decides to go to the club, and he meets Trinity. He decides to answer the phone, talks to Morpheus, and decides to try to escape the agents. He decides not to accept the deal of the agents. He decides to stay in the car and go and meet Morpheus. So how can you differentiate one of these decisions from the other as the inciting incident when they are all a chain of decisions. So my question is, where does that chain start? Because that's really the inciting incident. That is the thing that makes this chain of events happen, that leads us inexorably into the second act of the film. For me, it's actually the first scene of the movie after the trailer, which is very rare. You don't usually get an inciting incident that happens that early into the film, but these scenes are so inextricably interconnected that I think that you have to say that this is really the scene that makes it all happen, right? So Neo's asleep at his desk. He gets this message on his computer. Wake up, Neo. He's like, what? Sorry for the unflattering screenshot, Keanu Reeves. The Matrix has you. And then he's like, wait, what the hell? So then he gets the message that says, you got to follow the white rabbit. And the woman comes to his door who has the white rabbit tattoo on her back. And he's like, oh, I should follow her. So his engagement with the words on his computer screen and his decision to follow the white rabbit is what puts him in touch with Trinity, which is what puts him in touch with Morpheus, which is what puts him in touch with the agents, which is what leads to this whole series of decisions and events that break us into the second act of the film. So for me, that is the inciting incident of the film. And I invite you to disagree with me in the comments. I'd be interested to see what other people think it is. But that's the thing that stands out to me. So to go back to our basic act structure here, we've had the inciting incident. And now we have kind of the second half of Act 1, which is really just 2 scenes. And then we break into Act 2. So this is really our break into Act 2, right? Because Morpheus gives him the pills and he's like, you can stay in your world or you can take this one, you can come with me and you can go on this journey, right? So this is the scene that brings us into the second act. He takes the pill and then they find his body and all that stuff, right? So the first... So actually, let me back up for a second. Let's talk about the second act goal of the film. Morpheus presents this idea to Neo that he is the one, right? So the second act goal of the Matrix really is to determine whether Neo is the one. For Neo to go on a journey to see whether or not he is the chosen one. That to me is the goal of Act 2 of the film. The agents are the antagonists in as much as it's interesting because they're not really active antagonists in certain sections of the film, such as this sequence here, which is the first sequence of Act 2. But they are, broadly speaking, the antagonists of the entire piece because their goal is to stop Morpheus, to stop the humans, to bring down the human city, to stop the One from destroying the infrastructure of the Matrix and all of this stuff, right? So their entire reason for existing is to stop these people from doing what they're trying to do, which makes them very, very good and very powerful antagonists, right? So to me, the first half of the second act, so basically break into the second act up until the midpoint of the Matrix, is really about Neo, and by extension of Neo, the audience, learning what the Matrix is, what the world is, and how it works and how he fits into it, right? So the first sequence of Act 2, which is the third sequence in the film, is what is the Matrix, basically. Neo is learning what the Matrix is. Now you have this really interesting device at the end of this sequence where Neo basically, let me get my other hand out, he pops, right? So he says, I can't go back, can I? And Morpheus says, no, you can't. So they cannot reinsert him into the Matrix in terms of, like, they can't put him back in as like a battery. The machines can't, wire him back up, and he can't just go back into ignorance, right? He can travel into the Matrix through the technology that they have, but he can't be reinserted and just live there forever. That gives you this really great device of, well, now you're stuck here. So what are you going to do about it, right? So then the next sequence is the training sequence. How does Neo learn to live in this new world now that he knows what it is? And how does he begin his path of moving towards wrestling with this notion of, is he the one? So the training sequence, right, where he's like, he learns martial arts, and it's not just him learning martial arts or how to fly helicopters or how to shoot guns or anything like that, right? Morpheus is philosophically trying to impart upon him the idea of liberating his mind and understanding that the Matrix is a place where the rules can be broken. And if Neo is the one, it is essential that he expand his mind. So this is a functional plot piece that is moving you towards, you know, Neo learning the rules of the Matrix, learning to fight in the Matrix and stuff like that. But the philosophy of it ties into his journey of trying to understand whether he is the one and whether he can expand his mind and be liberated from his kind of Matrix-bound confines of perceiving the world. So when we get to the midpoint, to me, this is a really clever and very interesting midpoint. Neo fails the jump. That is the end of sequence 4, which is the second sequence of the second act, and that's where the midpoint typically falls structurally in a film. He fails the jump. So, you know, the first act is he going to go into the Matrix? Is he going to learn what it is? Okay, the first half of the second act is him learning it, and now we're trying to see, has he mastered the Matrix? Is he very obviously the one? And he fails the jump. So we don't know. It creates ambiguity. We're still working towards a goal. We haven't achieved it yet. We haven't solved anything. What I think is really, really intelligent and really well placed about this scene in the film is it comes right before, and here we'll look at our thing here, the midpoint. Then we're going to go into sequence 5, which is sequence 3 of Act 2. It comes right before he goes to see the Oracle. So now we have doubt in our mind because he failed the jump. Oh, maybe he's not the one. Interesting. What's going to happen? So he goes to see the Oracle, and Act 2, Sequence 3 is essentially all based around seeing the Oracle and Neo's interaction with her. And she says, you're not the one. So we've got this doubt of him failing the jump. Then she tells him, you're not the one. And now there's a lot of confusion and ambiguity about what the outcome of the film is going to be, which is complicated by Act 2, Sequence 4, which is Sequence 6 of the film, which is the agents find them. So they're all in the Matrix. Morpheus, Trinity, Apoc, Cypher, Neo, Flux. I can't remember her name. The woman with the white hair, is it Flux? They're all in the Matrix. And the agents find them. The agents are faster than them. They're stronger than them. They can take over other people's bodies, right? We know the rules of the world at this point. So they have to get out of there and they have to survive, right? So that is the goal of this sequence. And now we're going to break into Act 3. If you've seen the film, you know what happens. So you know the break into Act 3, which is Morpheus getting captured. So Neo has accepted the fact that he is not the one. Morpheus has gotten captured. Neo feels as though that's his fault. So he believes that he has to go back into the Matrix and rescue Morpheus. So the goal of Act 3 is a different goal from the goal of Act 2. The goal of Act 2 is to determine whether or not Neo is the one. Neo believes he is not the one. So the goal of Act 2 ends in his mind, and the goal of Act 3 begins, which is going into the Matrix to get Morpheus back. So the first sequence of Act 3, the goal is to rescue Morpheus, which, come on, this scene is amazing. And the dodge this and in the lobby of the building, the shootout, some of the best scenes in this movie are in this sequence. So if you've seen the film, you know that they do end up getting Morpheus away from the agents. And so then the goal becomes for them to take him back, to escape from the agents, to go to the phone booth and, you know, get back into the ship. So now we're here with the Act 3 twist. So what is the Act 3 twist? Trinity gets away, Morpheus gets away, but then the phone booth gets destroyed and Neo gets stuck in the Matrix and he has a decision to make. So much of this movie is about decision making, and that plays thematically into the film because it's looking at fate and how much of your fate do you control through your decision making and how much of your fate is determined for you, right? And there's this really interesting stuff with the Oracle, and if she tells you something, does it become true because it was already true, or does it become true because she said it and you believe that she knows what she's saying? So you create fate through what you're told, that kind of thing, right? So again, active decision. Neo sees the staircase. He knows that Agent Smith is coming to get him. He has the opportunity to run away up that staircase, to find another phone and to get out of there. and he decides to turn and to stay and to fight. And in doing that, interestingly enough, we actually revisit the Act 2 goal. Is he the one? And as Morpheus says, he is starting to believe that he is the one. And by not running up that staircase, but by turning and fighting, his active decision making is leading him towards the conclusion that he is the one, which then we find out in the final sequence of the film, really kind of like the second to last scene. He stops the bullets, he comes back to life and all that stuff, right? Fiend to cinema. So that is a basic structural breakdown. I'm like right in the middle of, I got to keep myself kind of not all the way in the corner because you can't see the act breakdown if I'm like right in the middle of the, anyway, it's a little difficult figuring out where to put myself when I make these videos. So anyway, that's a basic structural breakdown of The Matrix. It is a great film. I love this movie so much. It is so well written. I'm going to do another video on the teaser of this film where I break down why I think this is just one of the best teasers ever. I'm going to do another video where I talk about building active drama and tension in functional scenes within The Matrix, which I think will be a really interesting video because this movie does that really well. But I thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. Thanks for checking out the channel, and we'll see you next time.